Ant from ATC Studio, and I know you all really enjoyed my video on the top 10 best Death Guard units for competitive play. If you haven't checked that out yet, here we go, top right corner, have a quick look. It's a great video and I know you did really enjoy it, but today I'm going to be doing something different because you like that one so much, I'm going to be doing top 5 Death Guard units that you shouldn't include in your Death Guard list. And I've seen these included in this before in 9th edition, and they are really bad, and it's going to give you a massive disadvantage in the game. So you definitely shouldn't include these in your list. So, I'm going to start off with the Chaos Predator. Now, of course, this is on Wikipedia, which isn't updated to new points values, and the 9th edition codexes aren't quite out yet. So, these points values are out of date, but I will remind you of the changes for when that's really necessary. So, the Chaos Predator is... The problem with this is Death Guard as an army is built for resilience, and this is entirely designed differently. This is entirely designed to have a cheap model that puts out lots of firepower. Now, the problem with this is this isn't really that resilient. So you get T7, 11 wounds, and no invuln, as opposed to the Playburst Crawler, which is T8, 12 wounds, 5 up invuln, and 5 up feel no pain, which really makes such a big difference. And when you're going to have like all of your Death Guard army is going to be based on resilience. So there's no point having these not resilient ones in the back that are designed for firepower, because when you're facing the other army, which is always going to have more firepower, it's just going to completely wipe you out, because the point of Death Guard is you have not as much firepower, but your units are going to all stick around to the end and slowly wither down the opponent's army. And the problem with Chaos Predator is they'll think, ooh, those Playburst Crawlers, those Mephitic Blighthauls, and those Plague Marines and Poxwalkers, they're all really resilient. But these Chaos Predators are at the back, those 2 Chaos Predators, they're not resilient at all. I'll quite easily wipe them out, and that's what you've invested quite a lot into them, and they're going to quite easily get wiped out. And they're only really going to get 1 or 2 turns of shooting, which is really, as a thing that does lots of firepower, not really enough. And furthermore, the thing is, you don't want the Heavy Bolter, because that's just pretty rubbish. You can't really take anything down with that. You're going to want to have las cannons, so 4 las cannons. That's a lot, that's like 80, 90-ish points added on to your Predator. So you're already really expensive. You're already nearly as much as a Playburst Crawler, which is going to be doing a lot better. And although it does hit on 3s, there isn't really, this won't fit with your army, as it's going to get wiped out really quickly. And although on paper it's quite good, you don't want to include one of these in your Death Guard list, because it just doesn't fit with the whole army style. And if you do really want those las cannons, and you can't have entropy cannons because you want strength 9 as opposed to strength 8, then of course you can always have the Chaos Lamerater, which is a lot bigger. You invest a lot more into it, and you get 4 las cannons, and it's T8, 16 wounds, 2 up save. And of course you can use the stratagem 1 CP and give it 5 up feel no pain. And while you're at it, transport some infantry. So if you want some las cannons, you might as well take the Chaos Lamerater and give it disgustingly resilient to fit in with your army. However, again, of course, Playburst Crawlers are probably the best heavy fire support for Death Guard and Mephitic Blighthauls. And also maybe Defilers, they're quite decent. They have 14 wounds, so you are investing a lot in them. So you could also give them your disgustingly resilient. However, you're not really investing enough in Predators to give them disgustingly resilient. And if you only have 1 Predator, then it's not really worth it, because you're not getting the amount of firepower, because the thing is, just 4 las cannons, they're not going to do much on their own. However, you really want to run them as like 3 of them, so you get 12 las cannons. So it's really not the best unit. Next up, we have got Lord Falcius, which is, so Lord Falcius is a Death Guard model that came in the Lord Falcius and Tainted Cohort box, which is going out of stock on Games Workshop, but you still probably will still be able to use it. However, the problem with Lord Falcius is he is the same amount as a Lord of Contagion with your Man Reaper, in exactly the same points. However, he's a named character, so you can't give him a relic, and of course you also are stuck with the Lamerater, and the Plague Reaper is the better weapon choice. So there really isn't. So he's basically a tiny bit worse version of a Lord of Contagion that's pretty much identical, but in two places is exactly slightly worse. So there's no point having this, and if you do buy the model because it's very cheap, then you might as well just use it as a Lord of Contagion, because that's just slightly better. So that's very simple, not too complex. Just don't use it as Lord Falcius, use it as Lord of Contagion. Now, annoyingly, I see lots of people use the Falcius as cohorts. They say it's quite nice to have just a unit of 3 Blight Lord Terminators. However, this is pretty rubbish, because the problem is what's the purpose of this? You have 2 combi bolters, so that's 4 shots, 8 when rapid fire, 8 bolter shots, nothing particularly special. You have a plague spewer, so you basically have 2 of them who have okay melee weapons, 2 who also have okay, not great range weapons, and then you have 1 that has a decent range weapon, but it's only short range and he doesn't have any melee weapons, so it doesn't really fit well together. And the fact is, Blight Lord Terminator is really much better, because this one, it never quite has one singular use that really works with it. And of course, Blight Lord Terminators, you can kit them out for melee, give them flails and all the axes. They all automatically have all robotic axes, and then you can give 1 or 2 flails and really kit them out for melee, or you can give them like all combi melters or combi plasmas and really kit them out for range. However, this is sort of a mix of both and not really designed for either, so it's really not worth it, and you just take the normal Blight Lord Terminators. So next up we have got the Biologist Putrefier. So the problem with Biologist Putrefier is it doesn't do anything in melee or shooting or anything like that. Its main thing is Death Guard units within 3 inches, Blight Blaze are strength 4, damage 2, which on paper is really good. However, in practice you're going to pay over 60 points for a model that it's really not going to make too much of a difference, because unless you're like facing a squad of 4, unless you've got a squad of 20 Plague Marines all with Blight Bombardment, and you have this, which is basically a quarter of your army, because Plague Marines are 18 points a model, designed for just 20 grenades and made slightly better, which really isn't worth it, unless of course you know the opponent's running like many squads of like 40 cultists, because if they're running smaller squads, you're going to have to differentiate between squads, and it only really works with the blast weapon rule, because then it's getting 6 shots a model, because of course otherwise you can just use other special rules to have 4 bolter shots a model, and other stratagems to have 4 bolter shots a model, and you're not wasting all these points on the Biological Putrefier that does nothing else in any other places, because yes, the injector pistol's okay, but strength 4 realistically it's not actually going to wound anything, and AP 1 realistically they're going to save it, and D6 damage it's only going to be 3 or 4 damage, and that's only on like infantry, so well, not infantry, but only on not vehicles, so it's not really worth it. It's pretty rubbish, and there are way better Plague Marine combos than the Blight Bombardment with Biologist Putrefiers. Now, last up on this list is a bit of a shame, because it was really good in, well, quite good in 8th edition, is the Fated Bloat Drone. Now, the problem with this is, if you want to equip it with the 2 Plague Spitters, which is the only real option, because with the Heavy Blight Launch, it's basically a heavy support option that is rubbish at heavy support, then it's going to cost you 155 points. And for not many more points, you can get like 20 more points Playburst Crawler, which is also going to have 2 more wounds, T8, and of course the Playburst Mortar, as well as the Heavy Slugger. Playburst Mortar being a really, really good weapon, which will do a significant amount of damage on its own. So it's really just a bit of a waste, and yes, you can use it for like stickiness. Like in last edition, you would use it just to stay on the board, annoy the opponents, soak up firepower. But now, so you're spending 150 points on this when you could just spend 100 points on the Mythic Blight Hauler, and that's only going to have 2 less wounds. So it's still going to per point be more resilient, and it's going to put out a ton more firepower and give an aura to buff up nearby infantry and so on. So there's really no point using the floated bloat drone, because there are way better options in the Death Guard Codex, which is a bit of a shame, especially as I bought 3 of them. That's a waste, but so there are, of course, better options. And of course, remember to check out the other video about the best Death Guard options, what you want to include, because of course that's probably more important for fairly obvious reasons. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. Of course, make sure to like and subscribe, and of course share it with other people who enjoy it too. But for now, bye.